We all know that feeling of being watched. Whether you get the feeling while you're home alone, taking a shower, walking to the store at night, or on your daily run, we can all agree that the feeling is dreadful. It's a sense of hopelessness and anxiety, coupled with fear. But luckily, for most of us, it's nothing more than just a feeling. However, others aren't so lucky. In some very shocking cases, some people experience this feeling of being watched daily, mainly because for some, it's more than just a feeling. On the daily, people are being watched, taunted, and harassed. These people are the victims. The people who perform these actions on a disturbing level are stalkers. Pardon the long lead up, but I needed an intro. Anyway, I shouldn't really have to explain the term, but just in case by some miracle you don't know it, stalkers are people who harass or persecute someone with unwanted and obsessive attention. As an introvert myself, and as someone who suffers from social anxiety, I already fear the constant attention of people. I already fear people watching me as I go about my business. That being said, I could only imagine what it would be like to have my own stalker. Honestly, that's a living nightmare. That only makes these cases of stalkers just that much more horrifying. But without any more stalling, let's talk about some of the scariest cases involving stalkers. As we all know, stalking and harassment can take different forms. It can be physical or digital. The latter is known as cyberstalking. And one of the very first cases of cyberstalking happened when the internet was still in its infancy. In 1998, the first person to ever be charged with cyberstalking, Gary de Apenta, was a 50-year-old security guard who had a disturbing obsession with a younger woman, Randy Barber. Here's what happened. 3 years prior to his arrest, in 1998, in 1995, de Apenta developed an unhealthy obsession with Randy Barber. As his obsession grew, he began to stalk her. He would follow her around town, make lewd comments, and even make unwanted advances towards her. It was also rumored that he would sometimes wait by her house in his car until nightfall, go to her bedroom window, and watch her while she slept. However, that one's just a rumor and there is no actual evidence pointing to it being true. Regardless, I wouldn't put it past him given everything else he's done. Anyway, the harassment eventually became too much to handle, that it forced Barber to talk to the elders from the church. When she told them about everything that happened, they banned de Apenta from the congregation. But that did not stop him. Fast forward 3 years later, de Apenta was still holding a grudge and went online to get his twisted revenge. In 1998, de Apenta went online to several sex-related chat rooms and posted on them as Barber. He wrote very explicit things and, still pretending to be Barber, he posted on the chat how she, again him in disguise, had fantasies about how she wanted men to come to her house and rape her. He also included Barber's address. What's even scarier is that he also created an email in Barber's name, so when anyone contacted him, he would give detailed instructions on how to break into Barber's home, and even bypass her security system. Between the next 5 months, 6 men would show up at Barber's residence, telling her that they were there to satisfy her rape fantasies. Barber was understandably confused, more so because of the fact she did not own a computer. And every single time one of these men showed up, she had to turn them away with the fear that they may come back. After some time, Barber eventually found out de Apenta was behind all this, and had him promptly arrested, to which he was arrested on the charges of cyberstalking and was sent to prison for 6 years. In Conestoga Valley High School in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, 16-year-old Lori Sho became the victim of non-stop harassment by a fellow peer, Lisa Michelle Lambert, in 1991. According to officials, Lambert was furious with Sho because she apparently dated a mutual acquaintance, Lawrence Youngkin. As a side note, Lambert had also been pregnant with Youngkin's child, and became extremely jealous of Sho, as she believed Sho was trying to steal him away from her. In all actuality, Cho was reportedly raped by Youngkin, and Lambert actually went out of her way to tell him to stop contacting/talking to her. It was this sad misunderstanding that led to Lambert's obsessive stalking and harassment. Lambert would belittle Cho at school, openly threaten her in public, make countless threatening and obscene phone calls at all hours of the day, and would even follow her home and stand outside for hours. It got so bad that Cho's mother even filed assault charges against Lambert, but it did next to nothing to stop the upcoming tragedy. Lambert's stalking would quickly escalate to murder, not long after the assault charges were filed against her. On December 21st, 1991, Cho's mother received a phone call informing her that there was a meeting being held regarding her daughter's grades. What she didn't know was that Lambert was actually the one on the call, and she made the phone call to get her out of the house, leaving 16-year-old Lori Cho home alone. When Cho's mother returned home, she was horrified upon a discovery of her daughter's body. Lori Cho had been stabbed multiple times and had her throat slashed. Upon discovery, however, she was still alive, but not for much longer. With what little strength she had left, she informed her mother that Lambert had killed her. Lambert and her two accomplices, Tabitha Buck and Lawrence Youngkin, were all arrested the following day. Buck and Lambert were all given life sentences, while Youngkin was given a lesser one, since he only drove them there, and even testified against them. This case was what actually forced Pennsylvania to enforce stricter laws against stalking. 35-year-old Richard Farley worked at Electromagnetic System Labs Incorporated as a defense contractor in Sunnyvale, California, when Laura Black, 22 years old, was hired to work at the company. She was your average woman, young, smart, beautiful. Farley became obsessed with her. He asked her out multiple times, and Black simply turned him down. However, instead of just doing what a regular person would do, give up, he continued to obsess over her. He would continue to ask her out, and even bought her multiple presents, constantly. Unfortunately, his obsession only began to grow increasingly more unsettling. In the following years, Farley would make inappropriate remarks towards her, sent her more than 200 letters, and he started to show up at Black's home several times. He showed up at her home so often that she was forced to move. More than once, actually. Despite her constant moving, he somehow continued to find her new home, and would constantly sit in his car outside each one of her homes. His behavior escalated to the point that he was fired from his job because of how threatening he was becoming. But it doesn't end there. In spite of the fact that he was fired and was told several times to leave Black alone, he continued to stalk and harass her. At some point, Black even filed a restraining order against him. It was this action that really set him off. On February 17, 1988, Farley drove over to his job carrying a variety of different guns, and more than enough rounds to kill every person in the building. Farley made his way into the building, shooting his first victim in the parking lot, and then opening fire inside the building. Farley shot many employees as he made his way to Black's office, where he shot her twice. Miraculously, though, she survived. When police arrived on scene, Farley engaged with them in a 5-hour standoff, until he eventually turned himself in. In court, he was found guilty for several accounts of first-degree murder, as well as several accounts of attempted murder. In the end, he killed 7 people and wounded many more. Farley now sits in San Quentin on death row. Having a stalker is very serious. You have no idea how far someone is willing to go over some obsession. With that in mind, be safe out there, and try not to be dumb, for lack of a better word. If you know someone is stalking you, tell the police. And if they don't help, keep reporting it until they do something about it. Well, with that out of the way, let me leave you with this little factoid. Did you know 1 in 6 women and 1 in 19 men in the United States will experience some form of stalking during their lifetime. Those numbers seem small when you take them at face value, but you have to remember, we live in a country of 323 million people.